I think the biggest impact of unlearning and the learning that came with it is
Right.
really the importance of flexibility and agility,
Mhm.
really making sure that all coworkers in the organization, whether individual contributors or people manager, they're not held back by this outdated thinking. I'd say, if I may use that
Mhm.
to describe what you just said, and really allow them to embrace these new practices and new skills that allows them to evolve with the growing and dynamic needs of the organization.
Welcome to episode 5. We're at season 17. And today we have something, or a very knowledgeable person when it comes to unlearning, changing the game through unlearning. We have Anne Lopez here with us. And as usual, I'll allow Anne to introduce herself. Anne?
Thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone. My name is Anne Lopez. I'm the Senior Manager for Talent and Learning for Amcor Flexibles Asia Pacific. I've been on the role for 8 years, but course of my career, I have over 20 years experience in HR, OD, and training. In my present role, I develop talents and foster a learning culture across the Asia Pacific region for Amcor. Glad to be here.
Wow, that's a very interesting topic, fostering a learning culture, and especially for a multinational. But let's set aside the multinational part first, because I think it'll just make things more complicated. Because when it comes to creating a learning culture, I think it's pretty much the same with just the methodology, given your
True.
size and
Mm-hmm.
geographic setup of your organization.
Mm-hmm.
But let's start there. Uh, you know, the changing is supposed to be part of your culture. I'm sorry, learning is supposed to be part of the culture of any organization. And one of the biggest frustrations I have as a facilitator, because I facilitate a lot of leadership and soft skills, is while I train them in the classroom, when I go back, when they go back to their organizations, the system in the organization itself doesn't seem to support what I taught them. Okay, so it just gets
Mm-hmm.
lost somewhere in the
Mm-hmm.
organization, whatever happened.
Mm-hmm.
And coming back is very expensive. So it oftentimes it just cancels out. How is that related to creating this learning culture in an organization?
From my experience, it has a lot to do with how you have designed the program and the reinforcement that follows after the program. So it's not obviously, this, right? It's not just an event, but it's a series of programs that's sustainable. And there's reinforcement with a great role and responsibility falling on the shoulders of our line managers, the people managers who are
Hmm.
expected to, see whether their direct reports or the participants they've set to the training are actually applying what they learned, right? It's holding them accountable to
Hmm.
this. Yeah. I think that's a big
You
part.
know, actually having been a middle manager for some time myself, and I can imagine today, because I think it's worse today. I
Mm-hmm.
think they have less time. I mean, that's the
Mm-hmm.
perception they have. They
Mm-hmm.
have more accountabilities, if you want to
Mm-hmm.
say.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, coaching and learning usually is becomes a tick box. Okay. Oh, I coached Anne. Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
followed up
Mm-hmm.
on her training,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, maybe because of them feeling too much pressure or whatever, it doesn't quite add up sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help the managers go through this?
Very interesting. I think it's a universal, challenge across, right? The managers are expected to do more with less, deliver the results, and at the same time expected to develop the people under within their responsibilities. We have recently embarked on a people at center journey. It's still ongoing, but we're focusing on the key moments that matter in an interaction
Uh,
between
mhm,
a manager and an employee. Right? These are the touch point that makes it important to build that in terms of engaging and developing the coworkers. So we start from obviously from recruitment, we start with the onboarding, and then the training and development, performance management. So what we're currently doing is we are, how do we say, implementing toolkits, just in time resources that the managers
Mhm.
have access to, readily access to, as opposed to, here's a 200-page guidebook, find what you need in there. So it's segmented into these different moments, and then, according to topic that you just need, we have that. We also have, related to the power of unlearning, last year we have implemented Project Micro, which is a learning solutions for our, not only for the managers but the coworkers, at how do they upskill and develop at the time where they need it the most, as opposed to, sending them to an 8-hour training, right?
Right.
If I just need the specific information, do we have the tools and resources to equip me? Say, for example, in terms of providing feedback, right? What resources do I have? If I want a refresher, you know, can you remind me again, what's the grow model?
Mhm.
What's the prompt question if I want to facilitate a coaching discussion using grow model?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's become nano learning now. It used to be micro, then it became
Mm,
nano. It's becoming
mm.
even smaller and smaller.
Yes,
Like
yes.
there's just 5 minute, 2 minute clips. Oh gosh, okay. Now I know what questions to ask
Yeah.
and what sequence to go
Yeah,
through.
yeah. The structure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In fact, yeah, that's how training. At least that's how I understand training has evolved. Okay, I mean that
Mm,
you could tell by the color of my hair that oh, I started training when we were still using
uh,
carousels with the
mm,
slides.
mm,
Okay,
mm,
that's how
mm,
long
mm,
ago.
mm,
And all these how do you say e-learning and micro learning,
mm,
all of that wasn't present. It just wasn't available.
mm.
So I mean that's when I started. Then all of these it started off with e-learning, I think, and
Then
some
blended
companies
learning.
go ahead. Yeah, yeah. In fact, I would even venture a guess that it started with the whole when they moved coaching to online, when they made it
Mm,
available in
mm,
the
yeah.
HRIS, if you want to
Mm,
say.
mm.
It sounded like a good idea, but sometimes if it was implemented incorrectly, it was just I coached Anne, yay!
Yay, that's
Click,
done.
see, it's fixed. Yeah,
That's done. Yeah. But
that's
really, the
done.
impact, how does one measure that, right? That's the
Right now, in
challenge
fact,
still.
well, that was my next question because I've had an instance where we were trying to implement the learning culture in the organization. It's a big group. It's worldwide, and the metric was how many courses. Again, I'll use you as an example. Let's say I'm your manager. How many courses did Anne complete in the courses available to Anne? Okay, that was the metric, and in order for me to get a passing score, Anne supposedly was supposed to have completed 5 courses.
Mm,
Okay, so let's say under me I had 2 or 3 people with the same metric. And here's the challenge because maybe Anne completed all 5, but let's say Dino, uh, he completed 3, but he could actually show that he employed what he did, what he learned, and actually saved the company
mm,
$2,500. While
mm,
Anne wasn't able to demonstrate anything except
mm,
completing the course.
mm,
Okay.
mm.
When it comes to measuring impact, how do you work around that?
There are two ways we measure it. On the personal level, like those who we send to this development training, it should be
Mm.
targeted. It should be anchored based on their development, identify development needs, right? What
Right.
are we trying to address here? Is it knowledge? Is it experience? Is it skills? So it should be targeted, and the impact is that, obviously, post that intervention, whether that's
Mm.
coaching, attending a
Mhm.
training, or participation in a conference or a project, there should be observable development into these areas, right? So that's one.
Mhm.
The second one is, we usually have our, let's say, annual engagement survey,
Mhm.
and this is one of the higher metrics. Like, I'm proud to say, right? Our unlearning campaign last year, it resulted to uh, positive improvement in the survey results specific to
Mhm.
learning opportunities, as rated by our coworkers in the Asia Pacific. So we have those ways currently of measuring impact and effectiveness, right?
Effectiveness.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. And actually, that brings us down to actually the main word in this discussion: unlearning. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Uh, some time back, I read a quote about, it's more difficult to unlearn than to actually learn.
Mm, mm,
And again, being older, people say, old people have a hard time learning. In my thinking, I
mm,
go, as long as I want to learn it, I'll learn it,
mm, mm,
no
mm,
matter what age.
mm.
Okay. So,
True. True.
I'll figure out something. Like if you take example for me, I'm no longer interested in my corporate career because I'm getting away from that. And, I'm pretty much comfortable where I am. And AI looks interesting, but it's not something I really want to get into. Because
Mm,
for me,
mm,
it's what for? It
mm.
really doesn't
True.
add up in my
True.
mind.
True.
So for me, what the hell? Yeah, I won't even
Mm,
do that.
mm,
Now I know AI will have a huge impact, but sometimes it's the unlearning is driven mainly by the person maybe feeling comfortable where he is. And I
mm,
have two cases with Gen Z, two young
mm,
ladies
mm,
who were offered, managerial positions, one a director already. And they both refused because they said, I'm comfortable where I am.
mm, mm, mm,
Okay, so for them, I said, okay, yeah, it's a learning thing, but the ultimate objective, I believe, of learning is to have the guy move up, if you want to say advance,
mm,
or at the
mm,
very least, get into some lateral transfer so he
mm.
expands his knowledge or whatever it is. But if the target is to, let's say, move the person up a ladder and he's resisting, how do you work around that? Or you just say, well, just find somebody who wants to do it?
That's a very good question, and it's very common. We encounter that as well here in Amcor, and obviously in my previous organization. I guess we always have to start with the why, right? If
Right.
someone is already comfortable in let's say I'll use myself as an example. I'm in a comfort zone. I'm doing well. My stakeholders know me well. I deliver my project. I'm no longer interested in moving up or even horizontally expanding my knowledge. We start with the why. Is there a need, right? What is the need? Is it because maybe there's changing expectation? Yes, you will be remaining in your role, but there is a need for you to upskill because it has evolved, it has been redesigned,
Mm.
there's different expectation, and there should be that alignment on the importance behind the why. Why do you need to do this, right? I know it's easier said than done, but it's really having that communication and understanding, right? Questioning the intent, and maybe challenging existing assumption that I'm no longer interested, and finding out,
Mhm.
um is there a new or relevant information that's helpful for you at this stage. So it's always again a conversation between the job holder and the manager, right? that
Mhm.
that has
Right.
to take place. Yeah.
In your thinking, let's go back to that conversation.
Mm, mm,
And I think this also has to do a little bit with the manager's unlearning.
mm,
Okay.
mm, mm,
Again, with
mm,
these two ladies, and especially the
mm,
younger generations who ask me
mm,
about, and I tell them, look, I said, if there's something your manager is doing that you don't like, the
mm,
first question I ask them is, have you told them? That's the very
true.
first question I ask them.
Mm,
Okay.
mm, mm,
And most of them say no. And then I teach them
mm,
tips on how to
mm.
say it.
Yeah.
Okay. But then the other question came into my mind. You want them to speak up, but how good are the managers at listening down?
Mm,
Because and there's so many factors involved with this. The singular
absolutely.
fact, the singular fact that I'm your manager and I'm the
Yeah.
one who can give you your
Mm,
your bonus at the end of the year is
mm,
already
mm,
puts you in a position of I better just please Paul. That's it. You know what I
mm.
mean? And that's already a start. Okay, and me maybe not being aware of it, or being too stressed by my manager and then trying
Yeah.
to have a conversation with you,
Mm,
it's just not working out.
yeah.
And usually, how do you coach the manager to handle these kind of situations? Because this was an interesting point. I read in an
Mm,
article. I said, you can have meaningful conversations, but the first question was how often do you talk to your staff in the first place? If I don't come in every morning and say, "Hi, Anne, how are the kids?" or whatever it is, Tama,
mm,
I
mhm,
go, if you're not comfortable talking to me,
mhm.
when I schedule a meaningful conversation, you're not going to say anything,
True. True.
anything significant. So,
Yeah.
how do you work with a manager to get them to maybe listen down a little better?
Very interesting. Yes, observation in terms of the ability to of a manager to not only hold meaningful conversation, but
Mhm.
creating the right environment, right? That
Right,
enables the coworkers or the team members to really speak up, right? So that's very important with Amcor. We start with an awareness of building an inclusive environment, having a psychologically safe environment where the coworker
right,
is encouraged to speak up. So starting from the onboarding and the expectations of our people managers, that's already embedded. And of course, right, what doesn't get measured doesn't get done in our
right,
people managers performance expectations, the annual performance reviews. We have set aside people development targets, right? How well do you develop your people? Do you hold meaningful conversations? Do you do follow-up engagement activities with them? Whether it doesn't have to be going out and really spending a lot, but it's more on the moments that matter, I guess. It's really the touch
right.
point, right? Aside from the one-on-one that you're scheduling every month, have you had an opportunity to just tap the back of your coworker and just say how they are, even if you're busy, finding curving out that time because of the importance that it can bring into the
Mhm.
engagement levels and also the
Right.
confidence, right, of your coworkers.
Now, that, for example, compared to a traditional manager, that's
Mm,
something we wouldn't even think of doing or having
mm,
some kind of impact. Okay,
mm,
we don't associate.
mm,
Every time I teach coaching, one of the biggest challenges I face is most managers don't put any value in it. They
mm,
don't see
mm,
that if I coach Anne today, I'll get a
mm,
result. They don't see it.
mm, mm,
Okay, so
mm,
so they say, "What am I coaching her for? I got all this
mm.
work. I'll just go and work.
Yeah,
Let's just
yeah.
reschedule the coaching." Okay, and then maybe going back to the unlearning part.
Mm.
What are the biggest unlearning points that you maybe seen or experienced while you implemented your strategies with Amcor? Yes,
Sorry, Paul, you were cut
you
off.
know.
Could you repeat the question for a bit?
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I
Can
can
you hear
hear
me
you.
now? Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Um, what I was asking is, let's go back to the unlearning part.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
and me, if I'm a manager used to one way of doing things, and now I'm asking it to do it differently. For example, like here, just tapping the shoulder of Anne, or even just having
Mhm.
a meaningful conversation instead of the usual, coaching sessions or performance appraisals.
Mhm.
That's new to me, and for me, it
Mhm.
makes no sense. Okay,
Mhm.
why? Because I don't see a result, which is
Mhm.
probably the
Mhm.
biggest challenge most managers face when it comes to coaching. They,
Mhm.
they don't see the value in it.
Mhm.
If I spend 10 minutes or 30 minutes with Anne, I don't necessarily see a result. So I'll just spend 30 minutes doing whatever report I'm supposed to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
So they get stuck in that trap.
Mhm.
And based on your experience with Amcor and as you implemented the learning culture,
Mhm.
what are some of the biggest unlearning points that, both the new generation and myself as an older or a manager had to go through?
I think the biggest impact of unlearning and the learning that came with it is
Right?
really the importance of flexibility and agility.
Mhm.
Really making sure that all coworkers in the organization, whether individual contributors or people manager, they're not held back by this outdated thinking. I'd say, if I may use that
Mhm.
to describe what you just said, and really allow them to embrace these new practices and new skills that allows them to evolve with the growing and dynamic needs of the organization. That's not going to hold them back. Another point I'd like to make is for the managers, the importance for them to see these conversations or these activities as investment that will bring fruition, maybe not immediately, but months or weeks with constant follow through and monitoring, they will see the impact. The impact obviously is not immediate because you can grow a tree overnight, right? But in terms of making sure that you are preparing them for, and ensuring their readiness, right, to fulfill. Because if you don't do well in investing in these kinds of initiatives and embracing these new, say, approaches, right, that's no longer serving the
Hmm.
purpose, then at the end of the day, you're not doing yourself a favor. Because what's happening today, if you don't do something about it, it's going to happen as well, the next performance
Right.
cycle or the next
Right.
fiscal year. So
Hmm.
if you want to see changes yourself as a leader within your team, you start with yourself.
Okay, excellent. And when you say doing well, what would you consider maybe the one or two top contributing factors for an organization to actually execute well, let's say a learning culture or an unlearning culture?
First would be continuous improvement, right? Not being satisfied with the status quo, but really embedding in the mindset, how can we be better? How might we be better in this area? How might we be faster? How might we respond quicker to the needs of our customers, our
Hmm.
stakeholders, and address their concern? The second one is making use of feedback loops that really drives our decision making and iterations, whether that's program or processes or initiatives that's going to
Hmm.
be implemented. Those are the top of mind, I can think of, Paul, right?
Right.
On what we need to do well to drive this into the organization.
How do you deal with an upper manager who says, "Okay, Anne, I got your budget, go do it," and just leaves you alone?
I'm very
Let's
fortunate.
rephrase that. Let's
Okay.
rephrase that. Let's say
Okay.
I'm the kind of manager who likes to throw money at problems,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've had managers like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay. How do you deal with a situation like that?
I'm very fortunate that with Amcor, our managers are fully supportive. But in my previous experience, right,
Yeah.
it's very tough to have successful implementation of whatever initiative if the manager is taking a hands-off approach and not really paving the
Mhm.
way in role modeling, right? So as an HR coach, it's my duty to give a mirror to this manager and say, hey, with you not doing this, these are the potential outcomes, these are the pros and cons. Are we prepared to take this on and have that conversation with this manager?
Actually, that's one of the major steps that let's say older school managers have to learn how
Mm,
to take. They have to.
mm, mm,
It's going beyond proactive because when I say
mm,
proactive, proactive is a response to an existing structure.
mm-hmm,
Okay, and you have to go beyond that existing structure. Okay,
mm,
so here we are. We want to go to a new structure. When you're proactive, you're still thinking of the old structure. So I'm being proactive to that. Now you want
mm,
a new one. So
mm,
you have to. It has to be more than proactive.
mm, mm,
Okay,
mm.
just can't. Proactive, yes, but I don't have a word for it. Okay, but they really have to be, how do you call it, passionate and embracing this whole learning culture, if you want to say.
It has to be
Uh,
collaborative
yes.
at
Mhm.
different levels, starting from the top to the bottom. There has to be a strong collaboration. Otherwise, you're correct, right? There's no way it's going to gain traction. Any initiative is not going to get
Yeah.
traction without this. Yeah.
Right. Right. I've seen that happen so many times. The manager says,
Mm,
"Oh," he just throws
mm,
money at the problem, just walks
mm,
away. I said,
mm,
"Okay."
mm. I've done my
I
part. I've
see.
given you the budget.
Yeah. And then they forget about it.
Mm,
Well, but those are some of the
mm,
challenges the upper
mm,
leaders are facing now
mhm,
because whatever strategy or direction the organization has taken, they
mm,
really have to. How do you say? It's going beyond embracing. They have to
mm.
embody everything. So
Yes.
so so
Yeah.
so so it comes down clearly. It is quite difficult when the managers aren't there. You
Mm,
know, and you
mm,
know this just as well as I do.
mm,
Uh, but this whole why did you come up with? unlearning? Well, where did you get that notion where unlearning versus learning, if you want to say?
Glad you asked. It's again related to our employee feedback. Our employee feedback in 2023, considering as well our 2023 growth priorities, FY24, um, in Amcor Speak, it prompted us to reimagine how we offer our learning solutions for our coworkers, right? Going beyond the traditional classroom or virtual programs, how
Mhm,
can we reimagine our learning solution that it's more innovative, it's more agile in terms of supporting our coworkers across the region
mhm,
into their self development and upskilling. So that was the challenge, and so we came up with this program of micro learning, and we launched it through the campaign, and the campaign was changing the game through unlearning. Yeah.
mhm. All right, all
Mm-hmm.
right. So far, yes, micro learning. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could just describe for our viewers pretty much what micro learning is about. Because first
Mm-hmm.
there was e-learning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
then in fact they had an LMS, if you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
then they became an L, like a learning experience. It wasn't learning management anymore. It's learning
Mm-hmm.
experience system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, well, when it comes to the micro part, maybe for our viewers, just
Mm-hmm.
help them, walk them through a brief description of micro learning and the advantages and maybe disadvantages of micro learning.
Sure, Paul. Micro learning for us are a series of learning solutions that are aimed at developing our coworkers, right? From leadership, general development, technical as well to a certain extent. And we offer it in different, how do we say, choose how you want to learn. We call it at that. Choose how you want to learn. Do you want to learn traditional workshop? We have that. We got you. You want to learn virtually? We have that. But if you want to learn in the moment or as you need it, we have offerings, and we have what we call clips. These are videos that are 3 minutes to 5 minutes about feedback, about conversation, performance management,
Mhm,
just in time to get the most out of it. If you want that, we have that. We also what we call learning bite. Learning bite is those infographic. If you just want to
mhm,
read, you're having your coffee. Hey, I'm going to a session with Paul later. I'm going to coach him about this topic. Is there any material that I can use as a reference to prepare for that discussion? So we have that as well. We also partnered with a provider that offers online learning.
mhm,
And this online learning are two types. One is learning every day for just short burst of learning. Like if you're interested in a topic, say for to develop your strategic thinking skills, there is a program. So strategic thinking, there could be, let's say, 20 top subtopics around strategic thinking, and it's delivered to your inbox every day. So topic and action daily, you have that. And then we also have the workbook as well. So essentially, we're covering different learning modalities that we can offer to our coworkers, whichever mode they're interested in. The important thing
mhm.
is that you know they're aware they have these resources, and that they can use it to really upskill and develop themselves at any point.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, your library now isn't just a couple of e-learning courses.
Yeah,
It's all modalities.
yeah, different
You
modalities.
have
True.
you have the micro learning. You might have a
Mm-hmm.
little clip. You might have
Mm-hmm.
uh, infographic.
Mm-hmm. Learning
That kind of
bites,
describes
bite-sized.
learning bites. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, that's actually excellent that you broke it down that way. So at
Mm-hmm.
least uh, the whole notion of me having to unlearn my older
Mm-hmm.
habits
Yeah.
again, it makes it more interesting because I'm pretty sure I'll find something interesting there that'll make me learn. Okay.
True. And Paul, when we pitch this program to our senior leaders, it why unlearning, right? It should be learning still. But we were saying, it's not. it's not just adding up, right? But it's
Right.
more, if a skill is no longer relevant, it's no longer useful, you let it go, and you replace with a different skill. It may be into that concept, right? Not
Right.
necessarily discarding the assimilated knowledge that you've had throughout the years, but really thinking these skill sets that have accumulated over the past 10 years, are they
Mhm.
relevant? If not all of them, which one can I let go, no longer helping me serve
Relevant.
my purpose, and embracing new learning as well for me, and making it exciting for our coworkers to have this.
You know why I laughed when you said when you pitched this to upper management? I said usually upper management has a bigger problem with unlearning because they're no, because they're so stuck, and I can't blame them. I mean,
Mm,
most of them got their MBA in the 80s and 90s when it was all command
mm,
and control.
mm, mm,
It
mm,
wasn't, you know what I mean, all this. It's different
mm,
today the way we're thinking.
mm,
But
mm,
most of them got their MBAs in that era.
mm, mm.
And that was very command and control driven. You know, what is it? The shareholder value
Hierarchical.
above shareholder value, over everything else. So,
Mm,
and that's what they're used to. Okay.
mm-hmm,
So I was
mm-hmm,
surprised that maybe not surprised because I've seen unlearning situations most difficult with those who, especially those who've had success with their older models, if you want to
mm-hmm,
say.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
even this whole thing with work from home
mm,
and remote
mm.
work,
Yeah,
it's a new model.
it is. It
Okay.
is.
And some people are just so no, we're just going back. We're not even going to
Yeah,
consider it. Listen,
yeah,
huh?
yeah.
What I mean,
Mm,
especially in this country, we can lose up to 4 hours in traffic. What
mm,
I mean?
mm.
So, but even that whole concept is a challenge for many of the
True,
older managers
true.
who've had success in other
Mm,
ways, if you
mm,
want to say.
true, true.
Uh, but it's what's that thing I said? How can I? Uh, I forgot who said it was Confucius about the teacup.
Ah,
Like,
the
you have
teacup.
to empty
Yeah.
your teacup. You have to empty your teacup first before I could
Yes,
put in
yes.
new,
True, true,
knowledge. No,
true,
so
true,
I
true.
go,
Yeah.
and many of the managers are so driven by an older
Mm,
model
mm,
that
mm.
was successful in its own time, if you want to say, but now
True.
it's beginning not to make any sense
Yeah,
anymore.
true.
Okay, so
With the different
and
shifts and the changes, the very dynamic landscape that we have in the business as well.
yes,
It
yes,
calls for change. It calls for continuous improvement, and really,
right.
how do we keep sharpening our saw? If my famous, I'm fond of that line. How do we keep on sharpening our saw to really be effective and efficient, productive in this high stakes
In this high
environment?
stakes, yeah, yeah, it just changes so quickly, if
Yeah.
you want to say, and this is part of the whole technology.
Mm,
How do you say growth?
mm,
I mean, we
mm,
haven't even figured out one technology. Here's a new one,
mm,
huh?
mm, mm.
so
True. Mm,
so we
mm,
we really get lost in terms of seeing any value sometimes in learning because
mm.
oh, I haven't even finished doing this. Now there's a new one I have to learn. So sometimes it does get confusing. But when it comes to things like leadership and all that stuff, those things are fairly universal.
True. True.
Maybe just the way you interpret it. Maybe the rules have changed a little bit, but
Mm,
they're fairly universal,
mm,
and you should be able to work through it to unlearn if needed,
mm, mm,
if that's what you want to call. But overall, so far, I mean, if you may, how's
mm.
Amcor doing in terms of implementing the unlearning and learning culture, and how's it coming along with the end result, with the business case, if you want to say?
True. Business case engagement levels. I mentioned this was triggered by our 2023 engagement
Mhm.
levels. We had our 2024 engagement survey recently, and there's significant improvement. So,
Good.
engagement impact, that's one. I'm also proud to say that yesterday, we had our Asia Pacific President Award,
Ah,
and this program, um, was awarded the People Program Award for 2024. So it's a testament, right? That the leaders
Bravissima, as
recognize.
they say.
Yay, thank
All
you.
right.
So it's just timing. It's fitting. We got the award for recognizing the impact and the sustainability of
Right.
this program across Amcor in terms of developing our people, and also the ability of this program to be, how do we say, replicated in other business groups. So that's something that I'm proud to say and share with you, Paul, and the audience here.
That's excellent news. Especially with engagement.
Yeah.
I'm always I sometimes I'm just laughing at the articles about engagement. I said we've been measuring engagement for more than 20 years now, I think,
Uh,
and it never seems to move. It's
ah,
always there.
yeah.
It's always, hey, 70% of your
And what
workforce is not
actions have been done,
engaged.
right? Has there been any
Yes,
action?
and then I began thinking that maybe there's more to it than than
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
just
yeah,
see.
yeah. There,
And
obviously,
this is
there's
a
a
lot.
lot of factors at play here, right? But
Yeah,
if you
and
have
somebody,
really targeted
yeah,
programs, that's helpful.
there's somebody answered. There was one company where they just paid me a whole bunch of money to shut up and keep my head down. I said, that sounds familiar, right? so, so I said,
Mm,
well, yes. So there are many things you have to consider, but I'm glad that you're seeing a result because it's it's
mm,
it's proof
mm,
that if you want to say this actually
mm.
works when implemented correctly,
Yes,
especially with
yes.
the spirit at the actual level of the conversation that I'm
Mm,
having with you.
mm,
Okay, because oftentimes that's where the problem actually sits.
mm.
You could say, "Oh, Paul, did you coach Anne?" Yes, I coached her. But I don't ask about the conversation.
Yeah,
I'll just say,
yeah. I
"Yay,
just
Paul coaches,
completed
take it
it,
off."
right?
Yeah, they don't ask about
Done.
what the quality
Yeah,
of the conversation. So I was like, "Huh?
yeah.
Okay." And then at
What's
the
the
end of the
impact?
quarter, what happened? I thought you coached her, and then I'll
Yeah,
blame Anne for being, whatever. So,
yeah. It's beyond my control. I already told her what to do.
sounds like you've heard a lot of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm, mm, mm,
Well, that's and when I train managers, that's something I tell them. I said, look, the higher up you go, the less excuses you're allowed to give.
correct.
I don't care. I don't care what you say. You are accountable, and I'll always, sorry. That's just how it is. I go.
Mm,
You can't
mm,
say it was Anne's fault or
mm.
or Paul's fault or Dino's fault. You,
The
you
buck
can't say
stops with
that.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But unfortunately, there's some organization where it still sticks around.
Mm,
Okay, where a VP, he says,
mm.
something like, yeah, he blames his staff for not achieving a target. I said, come on. And there was one training I had where the conversation was like that. He was trying to coach him. I said, hold on. And I was just straight in front of his face. I go, you can't say that. I said, your salary is 10 times higher than his. That's why you can't say it. I just told him straight in his face. You're not supposed to say that.
True. Sometimes it's having this candid conversations with the leader, right? and
Yeah.
and having that, it's not easy to hold this conversation, especially with the senior leaders,
Oh, yeah.
again, right? Because they know how to run their ship.
Yes.
That's their show. But at the end of the day, it's at least for me, I see my role as partnering with them to really see different perspective, and
Mhm.
somehow influence them into a way of thinking that really enhances their ability to respond to the people needs,
Right.
changes, the shifts that's
Right.
happening in the organization. And at
Mhm.
the end of the day, it's really making sure that we both deliver what's expected from a people and business results standpoint.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Right. It's funny because when I talk to the juniors or staff or even lower supervisors, I say, look, and talk to your manager if there's things that he does that you don't like, tell him.
Mm,
I said,
mm,
look,
mm.
you're not going to get an NTE for that. You can't. Okay.
True.
HR will not support the supervisor.
Yeah.
But I also told them you can't expect the supervisor to change either. Okay. But I said, at the very least, your mutual respect would have increased,
Mm, mm,
which makes you feel more comfortable to tell the manager that, I don't like this, I don't like this, or whatever, rather than just being there, be quiet, and making chismes in the pantry or
mm,
whatever wherever you make chismes.
mm,
At the
mm.
very least, it's going to do that. So I encourage them always to speak up because it's more. I mean, you look at leadership and you say you have to be humble. Agreed. If you're up there, but when you're
Yeah.
under, humility is being able to raise yourself to the level of the leader. It's not bowing down to him. You
Mm,
have to raise
mm,
yourself to the level of
mm,
the leader and speak to him as a person, not, just because Anne has the power of giving me my performance
mm,
appraisal.
mm, mm,
I'll show a
mm,
different reverence, if you want to say. You should be able to speak up to the person regardless.
true, true.
And I drive it home that the very least, the senior leader will gain a higher level of respect for you because
Exactly.
senior leaders hardly hear people tell them, sir, you were an you know. They don't hear that,
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean?
true. Mm,
Okay, so but at least that, okay, and even that's something that maybe the juniors, they have to unlearn that how do you call that power dimension, if
true.
you want to
Mm,
say that, just
mm, mm,
because Anne has is holding my performance appraisal,
mm.
I have to get that out of my head and
Yeah.
be able
Th-
to
it takes a while to unlearn as well, right?
oh
Because
yes,
sometimes culture, again, there's many factors here, right? We know that there's culture, there's how they were raised up, the
right.
environment. But really, part of unlearning is recognizing this, the
Mhm.
need to really be able. How do you hold, not only expecting your managers to hold meaningful conversations, but you setting an expectation to yourself as well, as you say, right?
Mm.
How do you speak up when needed? And there's different interventions that can be done with this. Obviously, HR is always right. I can't tell my boss this. HR, can you come help me give this message? And we were like, wouldn't it be more effective? And as you say, wouldn't your leader respect you more if you're able to raise this up? So, sometimes we have this intervention as well with the coworkers on the how and the why. But with Amcor, if I may share, we, from different aspects, from building these biases and being aware,
Right.
right, of the action that one has.
Mhm.
We start with that, being aware that there's a need to change, obviously part of unlearning, but also equipping our coworkers with the expected behaviors, right, that
Mhm.
enables them to be more effective, to be more confident, and obviously to develop into the potential that they have. Is if they're aspiring to
Right.
be a future leader in the organization,
Mhm.
you should have the confidence at this level now to have crucial, hold conversations, meaningful conversation, whether it's your
Mhm.
peers, it's your managers, or your other stakeholders. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's an unlearning, and our own culture doesn't really add up because our culture is very hierarchical, if you want to say. And some of us grew up in an environment where you can't say no to your parents or something. So they come into work with
Mm,
that kind of thinking, and
mm,
it's really,
mm,
really difficult
mm.
for them to overcome that.
I've
But
seen that.
yes,
Sorry to cut
yes,
you, Paul. I've
sure.
seen that very recently. We have hired a new manager. This manager came from a Filipino local corporation, and
Mhm.
maybe they were not encouraged to speak up. And there was a very different environment here in Amcor where everyone, regardless of level,
Right.
if you have something to say, an idea, or if you oppose an idea and you have a valid reason why, you're
Mhm.
expected to speak up. And uh, this manager unfortunately left the organization. Obviously, there could be a lot of factors always, right? But this
Right.
could be one. It's really, how does one adapt to the culture that's expected,
Mhm.
and that's very critical. It's very critical, especially if you're already at the manager level. We're
Oh yeah.
expected to to flex your style, to adapt. But sadly, maybe again, I may be putting assumptions here, but maybe the company previously wasn't giving that much intention or attention to having that kind of skill set or behavior.
right,
So that's
right.
just sad. That's just sad. Yeah.
Well, that kind of behavior in terms of doing it with intent, I,
Mm,
I hardly see it. I
mm,
don't.
mm,
Okay.
mm.
As a tip, well, what I do when I work with the staff when they approach the manager, I said, tell the manager how you feel. You tell, hi, Anne, I'm terrified to talk to you because if I say something that you'll disagree with, I feel like you're going to give me a bad score on my
Yeah.
performance appraisal.
Yeah.
Tell him that. I go, he can't, you know, get angry with you for that.
Mm. That's a valid
Yeah, but you're
feeling.
telling him how you
Yeah.
feel.
Mm,
So I'm
mm,
having a really hard time telling you this.
mm,
I,
mm,
you know, so and I tell him just say that. It
mm.
doesn't. How do you call it? Doesn't hurt anyone.
You know,
Okay.
Paul, when
Yeah.
coworkers approach me and sometimes leaders approach me and having that kind of feeling, I always ask them, what story are you telling yourself? What story about your line manager are you telling yourself that makes you feel this way? Right? Is
Mm,
it a story that, has there been a previous experience? If none, have you heard something
right.
that supports this assumption? Challenge yourself. Well, what's the story you're
Right.
telling yourself? And I guess that's key, is understanding what you're telling yourself. That's because that's leading to your feelings, that's leading
Hmm.
to your emotion.
Right.
And I guess that's some more practical and relevant action for
Hmm. Right.
for some of the folks that I coach, in terms of challenging them with their thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Two things to add to that. Essentially, that's emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Essentially, being able to call
Mm.
out your
True.
emotions.
True.
But more importantly, I also tell the manager if you hear those words, it's time for you to shut up and listen because he's trying
That's
to
your
tell you
signal.
something. Yeah, yeah, tell them it's a signal because yeah, go ahead.
Mm. You know what? Very recently, we had this. We had a mentoring session. We had a mentoring program. It's ongoing, and in this mentoring program, we had different levels of co-workers participate. Supervisors, individual contributors, managers, being paired with the senior leader mentor. And we were
Mhm.
telling the senior leader mentors, if these mentees reach out to you with an email or with a phone call, it takes guts, because they wouldn't normally do that and
Yeah,
schedule a meeting with you. So please take the time to respond and acknowledge, and really make sure that they feel safe reaching out to you and scheduling that mentoring
mhm.
conversation. That's one as well, because I guess most leaders, obviously, they're very businesslike. They don't really pay attention to this, but just knowing that it takes a lot of effort and guts, if I may say, for
Mhm.
an individual level contributor, entry level mentee, to reach out to a senior level mentor, right? But we encourage that.
Right.
We encourage that.
I've had the good experience of actually having that availability from a
Mm,
senior leader, if you want to
mm,
say.
mm.
But from the senior leader's point of view, if you're a boomer, if you're a boomer like me, what do you say? I deal with your feelings. You know what I mean?
Manage
I
that.
didn't have a
That's not
coach.
my that's
I
not
didn't
my
have a
problem.
I didn't I didn't have a coach when I was in your position.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what I'll just say.
I've dealt with
Uh,
much worse.
yeah. But this all adds up to essentially you call it the what is it, the moment,
Key moments that matter.
key moments, right? Key moments that matter. And the leaders, it's the onus is on them to pick up the opportunity.
Mm,
Okay,
mm,
because I as a new person in your organization or just out of college, might be still finding my way around on how
mm,
to create
mm.
that
I'm just a
connection.
child. No kidding.
Yeah, no, but I'm still a
Essentially.
little lost, kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's up to the senior leaders to take those
Mm,
opportunities and
mm,
allow it
mm,
to maybe bear fruit,
mm,
if you want to say.
mm. Okay.
But Anne, this is a Excellent conversation. For our viewers, is there anything that maybe you have an announcement? Maybe you're hiring people. Okay. Did you want to tell our viewers about?
Yes, especially if you're from the South area, Calabarzon. We've recently established South Luzon chapter of the PSTD, Philippine Society for Talent Development. I'm
Oh,
leading the chapter. So please reach out to me if you're interested to be a member, and let's embark on a journey together of learning and upskilling in the talent and development space.
mhm.
For our hiring needs, please visit our LinkedIn. That's Amcor, AMCOR. There's plenty of opportunities, whether in the Philippines or outside the Philippines, that we are hiring for at the moment.
Excellent, excellent. And to our viewers, if you enjoyed and learned a lot from today, please do not forget to click the bottoms at click the buttons at the bottom for like, subscribe, follow. Please click on all of those. It definitely helps us a great deal. And for our next episode, that will be episode 6, we have Lynn Moki, who will be continuing this and maybe going a little deeper into this with coaching conversations. And as always, learning is a never ending journey with limitless vistas.